This is the DAV Podcast, episode number 9. I'm Dan Klaskins along with Ashley Burns. Before we get started, let's do some homework here, tell you how to catch up with the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, as well as many other places. DAV.org/podcast, where you can get it anytime. DAV.org, also the place where you can find out how you can get help if you're a veteran in need of it, or help us help veterans by making a donation there. We help over 1 million veterans a year in life-changing ways. Couldn't do it without your help. Be sure to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram as well. Today, we're diving into alternative therapies for veterans. Lots of new ways to deal with some of the issues our veterans face with PTSD and some other ailments. And honestly, Ashley, as we get into this podcast, you look at some of the opioid crisis going on, not just in the veteran community, but throughout our country. And we're always looking for alternative therapies, ways to deal with these things. And today we've got a lot of guests, many of which you got to interview directly yourself, with some fascinating new trends that are developing.
Yeah. So going back to your point about, the numbers of people that are experiencing issues with opioid addiction. I mean, that's a huge reason that we're looking into this alternative therapy method. What can we offer people to reduce their reliance on those pain medicines? There's roughly 4.7 million service-connected disabled veterans living in the United States. And what we know, of course, is that veterans are more susceptible to opioid addiction because they're more likely to be suffering from chronic pain. And according to the Secretary of Veterans Affairs, veterans are twice as likely to die from an opioid overdose than civilian Americans. If you want to look at sheer numbers, in 2016, the VA treated about 68,000 veterans for opioid addiction, and close to 6,500 veterans in the VA healthcare system died of opioid-related causes between 2010 and 2016. So these are incredibly important things that we have to keep in mind. We have to be looking at pain management so that veterans aren't trying to self-medicate. I mean, that becomes its own issue when people are looking outside of prescription medication when they can't get their hands on it, using drugs and alcohol to self-medicate, which of course then can lead down different paths. And we know that there can be links to suicide in there. So really important that we grasp this and we go at it with everything we have. So for this episode, you're right, I did have the opportunity to sit down and chat with a bunch of different people. So I've been very heavily involved in this topic. But I spoke with DAV past National Commander Brad Barton. He's a Marine Corps veteran who suffered a spinal cord injury in Vietnam. And he's been in the VA system now for several decades. And over the course of our conversation, he shared with me that he's seen firsthand a lot of change in what types of treatment are available for veterans, and particularly those, battling chronic pain. And he's been taking part in the VA's whole health program and a number of its very unique offerings since its pilot program launched in 2018. And this is what he had to say about it.
Well, thank you, Ashley, for inviting me to participate in your program today.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to sharing with you my experience at the VA with these complementary therapies they're now offering veterans for treatment.
Excellent. Yeah, we're anxious to hear about it. Let's start. Can you tell me a little bit for people who don't know you or aren't familiar with you, if you could tell me a little bit about your history of military service, just briefly, and then tell me about how you were injured and the injuries that you sustained.
Yes, I served in the Marine Corps from 1966 till 1968. I was injured in Vietnam and Khe Sanh during the siege of Khe Sanh. I was hit in the back with shrapnel from a mortar round, which severed my spinal cord, and I've been in a wheelchair ever since.
So coming home and sort of getting used to this new normal of what your life was going to look like and be like and feel like, what was that like for you initially?
Oh, it was a major adjustment, but what helped me through the whole experience was the fact that I was so lucky and so grateful that I had survived my injuries, because they were so severe that they really thought I might not make it. So I was grateful for that, and that certainly helped me. And so I was highly motivated when I returned through the hospital system and went through rehabilitation to get back into some normalcy in my life.
And what did that look like for you? As you know, before you left, I don't know, were you were an athletic guy? Were you really involved or active? And then coming home, what was that like for you? What did your new normal look like?
Well, my new normal was to get an education. I was highly motivated. I knew with my physical limitations, I needed an education to overcome any discrimination I might encounter because of my disability. So I immediately enrolled in college and began my career in business administration, and eventually graduated in 1973 and worked for a while in the accounting industry, but got sidetracked by veterans. I've always been involved with veterans and helping them overcome the challenges they face. It eventually led to a job with the Veterans Administration as a voc rehab counselor, working with other veterans, disabled veterans going to school or pursuing other vocational goals.
I'm curious, when you were in VA versus kind of being a patient now, how far have you seen? I mean, I don't know exactly, how much you would have seen on the patient side necessarily, but you've been there for quite some time. You've been involved with VA for quite some time. How far do you feel like the approaches and the options that they now offer to veterans has come?
Oh, I think they've come a long way. I've seen the best of the VA. I've seen the worst of the VA. And by far, the time we're living in now, and I know there's a lot of complaints about the VA system, both healthcare and the service side. I think they've come a long way, and they're doing an outstanding job. Okay. So, yeah, I saw a lot of changes as a patient, too. Going through rehab back then, when I got to Hines Hospital, where I went through rehab, they told me it was going to be anywhere from 6 to 12 months. And they said, wow, how soon do you think you're going to do it? And I said, I think I'll be up by my birthday. Now, I got there in August. My birthday was October 11th. I was done with rehab by October 11th and discharged from the hospital. Today, rehab averages maybe 1 week, maybe 2, and that's the most. They're really pushing them out a lot quicker. I'm not necessarily convinced it's for the better, although I don't know that we needed all the additional time. There's so many new durable medical equipment devices, new types of wheelchairs. When I went through the VA, there was only one type of wheelchair that was available, and that was an Everett and Jennings folding chair. And you could have any color you wanted as long as it was VA green. So now you have so many choices, it's incredible.
Now, if we talk about this complementary and alternative, medicine approach, what were you looking to gain? What was your first draw to that?
I never really had a lot of pain with my injury. I know a lot of people with spinal cord injuries have a lot of pain. I never did. As I aged, of course, I started experiencing pain, especially in my right hip and in my back where I was injured. Nothing seemed to be working to alleviate that pain. So when they come out with the Mission Act, they started here in Portland as, I think, a test area for these complementary therapies. And the first thing I attended was the Whole Health Seminar. And it talked about how the patient was the center of his treatment, and he really has a responsibility for it, and he should, take advantage of what's available to him. Then I went to another seminar. They started a chronic pain clinic here in Portland, and they were talking about different alternatives, like you said, to opioids for treatment of pain. And one of them was mindfulness training. And I was intrigued by this. I thought this was a really interesting approach. So I went through this mindfulness training. It lasted about 8 weeks, 8 sessions. And it was really beneficial because it had you concentrate, either through body scans where you actually go over your entire body and become aware of the different parts and how they feel and how you feel, and how just to be present in the moment and be aware of what's going on in your body and how you're reacting to it. And then, meditation was part of that, sitting meditation, laying on the floor, meditating. It's all been very beneficial, especially making me aware of the pain and accepting the pain and dealing with it without use of any pain medication.
So it sounds like you were pretty open-minded to this approach. Whereas, I mean, I think most veterans are very skeptical about these complementary therapies, thinking they're like voodoo or witch doctors. But that's not the case. I mean, going through the mindfulness training alone taught me that I can control how I react to my pain. I remember after the first session, which was totally unbelievable to me, I woke up in the middle of the night and my hip was killing me. But instead of letting it disrupt my sleep, I said, okay, where's the pain at? How bad is it? What's it feel like? All these things. And eventually I fell right back to sleep. So it didn't disrupt my sleep at all. So right there, disproved any skepticism I had about the programs and these complementary therapies. That's amazing.
It is amazing. And I've also participated in yoga. I continue to participate in yoga. I also continue with my meditation and mindfulness. But right now I'm doing yoga once a week at the VA.
What do you think it sounds like you've tried a lot of the offerings that they have there, and I know there's probably, they're probably always working on additional things to add, but what do you think is next on the horizon for you?
Oh, probably I'm going to try to participate in the Tai Chi and also the acupressure. I want to experience the full complement of therapies they have to offer to see which one of those tools are the most beneficial in dealing with my pain as I age in my wheelchair.
And I think it's, what you touched on is very important because I think there are people, like you said, they're skeptical. And I think there's a concern that, as we talk about this opioid crisis and not being so reliant on that people are afraid of they're going to take my pain medicine away and I need this to function. And I understand that can be scary and no one wants to live with pain. But recognizing, like you said, I think the important part is that this isn't necessarily about taking your pain away, but changing the way that you manage and recognize your pain. So for those people out there that might be a little bit skeptical, they might be a little bit resistant, what would you say to encourage them to at least, seek out some information or find out what it's about?
First of all, I would challenge them to participate in the whole health program and find out what is available. And then I would ask them to at least pick out one of the complementary therapies and give it a try. If they don't think it'll work and it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But that doesn't mean just because that particular therapy didn't work, you should just immediately say the rest won't. You don't know until you've tried the various options that are available to you what's going to work for your particular pain.
Well, that is such a well-rounded, fantastic point of view, and I certainly appreciate you sharing that with me and you being willing to share your experience.
I appreciate what the DAV is doing to get the information out about these programs, and I know you guys will continue doing the job of serving the veterans.
Always good to hear from Brad Barton, our past DAV National Commander, and really get inside of his personal journey there around this topic is great. We're talking alternative therapies for veterans today here in this DAV podcast. Remember, you can keep up with us anytime, dav.org/podcast, and that's where you can really find all the resources out there on this issue and many more. But let's dive into our next guest. Ashley, I know you were able to talk with Michael Bastavanos, the Tai Chi instructor at the Washington, D.C. VA Medical Center, who started the VA as a volunteer running his class as a pilot program. But he has since turned it into a regular offering for veterans as part of the Whole Health program. Let's listen in to more of that conversation.
I've been doing this now for maybe close to 5 years. Started as a pilot project, as a volunteer, and then we turned it into a part of the integrative health and wellness. And I've been teaching Tai Chi since 1984, but started learning in 1966. And so I've had a long tradition of that, but also of learning the other internal energy work of Chinese philosophy and martial art, the meditation form called Neigong, and the Qigong forms associated with what we call Yi Chuan, which is literally mind boxing, and also Qigong forms associated with healing processes. And those healing processes, from my experience, come out of shiatsu therapy and medical Qigong therapy taught by John Cole. And so I've been very lucky to have had some teachers who have pretty long traditions of learning these things and transmitting, and having spent quite a few years in their presence learning things. But the idea really is that in the Chinese medicine point of view, we have a series of networks in the body that connect everything, all the internal organs, all the consciousness processes that we have, and all of the forms of discomfort, illness, things that we encounter, trauma. They impose a pattern, or they implant a pattern onto this network. And if you can start to unravel the pattern a little bit, if you can start to move the pattern back toward a more whole feeling in the person, they actually get a healing that is on so many levels, it's really hard to even parse it out. This was actually discovered by a German doctor after World War I, who treated a lot of soldiers who had shell shock. And what's his name? Goldstein, I believe. And his book is called The Organism. And he came up with the word holistic. And so he treated people, and he realized that healing and physical and mental healing go together. They can't be separated. And when the two work together, there's a certain synergy that happens that doesn't happen otherwise. And that many, many other things are possible when you add this synergistic effect into a process. The thing that's the greatest benefit from the Chinese medicine point of view is that we have this thing we call qi. And we've actually had discoveries over many, many, many thousands of years about how this energy force, this force moves in the body, and how it feels when you feel well, how it feels when you feel ill. And so by asking people questions, by looking at the way they move, by imposing different kinds of movements, a little bit of challenge here and there, they start to realize that change is possible. And that's what we're looking for in the end, is some kind of positive change that makes people more able to deal with the world.
So the veterans that you have here today, and I'm sure you've seen over 5 years, I'm sure you've seen people with varying disabilities. The folks you have here today, you don't have any newcomers today, I'm assuming.
Like, you never tell. They come all the time. They come in and out, and they figure out, is acupuncture going to help me? Is mindfulness meditation going to help me? Is the iRest program going to help me? And so we have many things that we offer. When you get a chance to figure out what it is that you feel is going to help you the most, then you get on the schedule and you get yourself to that class, and we're there.
Have you seen, like, folks that come to your class, any veterans that you can really tell have made some notable progress?
Yes. So I've had people come to class either on scooters or in braces, leg braces, and then, within 6 months, actually even quicker than that, things have changed. People with blood sugar issues, people with, and in truth, it is a medicine that we're training. In my classes, in Qigong and Tai Chi, we're actually training in the form of Chinese medicine. I teach it that way. So I teach it from the point of view of which channels are we trying to work with. So if somebody has a stomach problem, let's say the stomach problem is that they just feel nauseous, right? To us in Chinese medicine, we call that rebellious qi. And if we can take that rebellion and figure out where it's coming from, is it a mental problem? Is it something that the person is worried? Maybe they're worried about their situation, they don't have a place to stay. Many, many things could be involved in that, and so this disrupts their digestion. Or Maybe it's a nutritional issue that they've had a bad diet over years and years and years. And so the qi is used to being disrupted by the type of eating and the time of eating or not eating or any number of kind of issues that incorporate a psychological aspect to them. Also have, especially if there's a psychological aspect, there's a qi aspect. And this thing qi can be argued about forever, but once you've experienced the sensation, and that's the point of view I come from, is I want you to have a sense of the reality of your qi field. And once you have that, it's a very different world. You feel like, oh, I can actually move the energy of my stomach down toward my intestines, and I'll feel like I can sink that energy down, and it'll be flowing the correct way, and it won't be rebellious anymore. So the qi, that GERD process or the nausea can just disappear. And of course, we know from, people, we use a point on the wrist for nausea. This is a popular one. So that may or may not work depending upon what the root of that sensation is. But it can work, right? So this point can be stimulated by acupressure, but the same point can be stimulated by qigong or by acupuncture or just by meditation, by thinking about it. So qi will follow what your mind intends it to do. And that's the major part of the training, is to get people to understand that the mind is not something that just, it can wander, but you want it to wander in a certain way, to wander across the pathways that are really helpful. And so you find out which directions are helpful and you nourish those pathways. Generally, yin channels come upward in the body in the front, and yang channels go downward in the body in the back. And if we just take these two basic movements, people just start to feel better that way. They start to feel like, I have a front and a back and I'm a whole unit. So
I don't want to take too much of your time. I know you have a class
I can go on and on.
But, I mean, what you said was important too. I think in talking about a variety of veterans with different disabilities, some people who are in a wheelchair or in a scooter might not think that something like this could be for them.
Right.
But
no, it is, because qi is not limited in any sense of the word. If you're sitting, you can still move qi. My teacher, one of my main teachers, Wang Yanen, when he was in his later 70s, was in a taxi accident where he got his back badly injured. And for 3 months, he really couldn't walk. They brought him up to the practice site, and he would just kind of make his way down to where we were playing, doing our form, and he would get up on a table and he would sit in meditation, and he would watch the form, and he would do the form in his mind while he watched us, and he would flow the energy through his body as if doing movement. And by the end of the summer, he was much, much better. He never did fully recover from that, but his recovery was much more complete than somebody who wouldn't have had that training embedded in him and the ability to take his qi and move it into a healing aspect.
I really enjoyed being able to sit in on one of Michael's Tai Chi classes. I did sneak in there and take part in it, which was my first experience with Tai Chi. Enjoyed it very much, I will say. And it was a packed house. I mean, there was literally no more room in that space to add other veterans. So it's a very popular program. And what the participants really loved about it, I mean, it's certainly a very relaxing thing. It's good for their overall mental health. But they shared these really great stories with me about how they've seen these dramatic health improvements since they began doing this and other elements of the whole health program. Everything from improved blood pressure and A1C levels to enhanced mobility, weight loss, and just overall better mood, which of course, if we're looking from a body, mind, spirit approach, like this hits all those important wickets. So I was fortunate to snag some time with Army veteran and whole health nurse educator Kathy Bixby and the director of integrative health and wellness, Heather Malecki, both out of the Washington, D.C. VA Medical Center, to explore a little bit more about this program. D.C. was one of the 18 pilot locations for it. And they spoke to me about the impact that they've seen from the program personally, especially for Kathy, who is a veteran and she uses the program herself, and as well for their patients.
So my name is Heather Malecki. I am a physical therapist by training. I've been at the VA for over 18 years. Started in working as a staff physical therapist in the community living center. moved down into physical medicine and rehab, worked as the rehab director there for 15 years, and then moved into integrative health and wellness this past year. Currently serving as the director here for this program. I'm not personally a veteran, but I have veterans in my family. That's why I'm here. I love serving veterans and absolutely believe in the whole health program, the integrative health and wellness program, and the results that we see with our patients. And it's an incredible program. We'll be happy to tell you all about it.
Okay. And I'm Kathy Bixby. I'm actually working here as a nurse. I'm with the Integrative Health and Wellness Program as the whole health nurse educator. And I started my nursing career in the Army. I spent 9 years here at Walter Reed and then traveled to Hawaii because that was a place I could go, and then came back to Fort Belvoir. So I had about 9 years doing a lot of different things, but primarily oncology and critical care. And so I transitioned and continued with oncology in the civilian sector, and then had an opportunity to come here to the VA to continue with hospice and palliative care, which is really what was my passion in working with veterans at end of life. And at the time, VA was really just recognizing that 1 in 4 veterans that were dying in the country were, 1 in 4 that were dying in the country were veterans. And as an institution, healthcare institution, we needed to help make sure veterans were being taken care of that were dying, but most of them were dying outside of the VA. So I had a really wonderful opportunity to partner with VAs across the country and hospice agencies to improve the care that we're actually providing veterans who are dying. So all of that being said, I've been paying attention to whole health since about 2012. I started, the emails, I found myself reading them, and it just aligned with what I believed nursing was about, which is taking care of the whole person, mind, body, and spirit. I've been a product of this program. So working here as a veteran, I obviously know what we're doing, but I also decided to take advantage of it as a veteran. So I'd had my health care here, and I actually went outside of the VA because the person who, my primary care provider at the time, didn't ask me anything about my military career. I mean, nothing. And I thought, gosh, I'm a woman, I'm a female, and that, I just wanted to go out. I went outside looking for somebody to partner with me in my own health care. Found a wonderful provider. And then when I got involved with whole health, I said, I'm going to come back here because this is where I want to be, and this is part of what I want to bring here. And so I came back into this system, to get my own health care, and realized I could come to some of the classes that we were offering. And that's what I started to do. Long story short, looking at all these different components, I put multiple pieces together, took charge of choices I was making, and had pretty significant weight loss, and it stayed off for over 3 years. And that's after working for Weight Watchers for years and not staying successful. So the program worked, and I think it's probably one of the best things I've seen in 40 years of practice. So I'm here to just help get the word out and make sure veterans know that they do matter, and they matter more than the diagnosis that may be the reason we're taking care of them. And I just met with the group today in cardiology. It was so exciting. They were like, I could take charge of this. I said, exactly, that's what this whole thing is about. And they said, well, we know how to do this. This was 4 men that were in cardiopulmonary who are living with heart attacks. They're recovering. They're in their rehab phase from their heart attacks. And every one of them got it. They were like, I can do this, and I can see how this relates to this. And boy, if I did this, it was just amazing to watch them put the pieces together. And this was just a very simple introduction. So when we start talking with veterans about their own, what they have the power to do, I think it's incredibly affirming, especially in a system that is typically what's broken and how can we fix it. And we're shifting from that. There may be something broken, but it is not who you are. And let's focus on taking care of what matters to you first. And what's the matter with you will be part of that, but not the most important piece.
Mm-hmm. To that point, can you kind of give a little deeper dive into your own experience with this as a veteran?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So just a little bit of background. My dad was retired Army, retired Air Force. So I'm an Air Force brat. And I have a nephew who served in the Marines, a couple that served in the Marines, and one who was actually killed in Iraq. And I talk with the veterans about community because that's part of this experience too, our whole community. But for me personally, I tell the story. I have 2 young sons. My youngest is 30, and when he came into the world, he brought an extra 40 pounds and left it with me. And that's when I actually joined Weight Watchers. So I had been with them for many, many years, on and off, and did so well that I actually did get to work for them because I had lost weight and kept it off. And when I transitioned here to work here at the VA, and this is its own population too. I mean, we know that this is a difficult population to care for. And long story, that weight just came right back. And so I was taking care of working up in our community living center with aging veterans. At one point we had about 5 veterans, 100 years or older. And I had one veteran, 99-year-old Army nurse, who came to us for end-of-life care. And we kind of anticipated that she would maybe she had about 6 months to live with heart failure. And she was 99, and so I asked her about, did she want to plan her 100th birthday party? And she said, do you think I'll make it? I said, well, heck yeah, if we plan a birthday party, you'll have to. And so we went about planning this party and learned about her connection. Her son, who she'd been, had not seen in 35 years, and she had a daughter and granddaughters. And so we went about figuring out that connection and invited her daughter and granddaughters and to her 100th birthday party, and her 101st, and her 102nd. And then we celebrated her life when she died in her 103rd year. And so about this time, I'm thinking, I was like 59, and I realized that by the time you get to 60, you've already lived that 60th year, right? When you have your 60th birthday, that's gone. So I decided that I wanted to be one of those 100-year-old Army nurses running around here giving everybody a hard time, because she really, really gave us a hard time, told us what we were doing right, what we weren't. I mean, she would write things up for me on night shift to let me know what I needed to pay attention to. And so I decided that I was going to live my 59th year differently, and I was going to make some choices. So I just came to some of the classes that we were actually offering. So I've been a nurse for a long time, but when I was doing the nutrition classes, I was hearing things in a totally different way. When you look at that circle of health, it doesn't say diet anywhere on it. It says food and drink. And if you look at the small print underneath, it talks about nourishment and fuel. What an amazing way to look at food. Not from a place of, I'm too much, I'm eating too much, I weigh too much, all of that, but wow, this is about fuel and nourishment. And so I attended the classes, had an opportunity to do some coaching around nutrition, got on one of those scales that tells you everything, your muscle mass, bone, water, fat, everything. And at the time I was 59, my metabolic age was 72. So it was a huge wake up for me that I really needed to do things differently. And so I looked at how I was eating, made some different choices, actually took some things out of my diet because I had pretty significant fibromyalgia. Anywhere you touched, I hurt. I didn't take anything for it, but that was my experience. And so I eliminated a few things, and movement's important. We used to call it working the body. We've shifted that to moving because we now know that if you can move 30 minutes a day, we're reducing the risk of diabetes by 58%. That's huge. It's huge. Just those little nuggets of information. When I told those veterans I met with this morning, we could do this just by moving, they got it. And so anyway, I got a glider. You just stand on it and glide. And I had an old TV with a VHS in it. That's how old it was. Connected it to a DVD player. And I watched the entire Glee series. Every last episode and the band rerun at the end. And then I went on to Downton Abbey, and I watched the entire Downton Abbey riding. Hundreds of miles. But I wasn't exercising. I was moving. My brain, the right side of my brain, was loving this break. And then I was actually in a class learning more about whole health and understanding sleep. And so sleep, if we're not sleeping 7 hours a night, we really are releasing cortisol, a stress hormone. And so when we're biochemically in stress, our body says, I'm not giving up anything, because you're like running from a saber-toothed tiger. You don't even know when you're going to get your next meal. So it doesn't matter what you're eating or how much you're moving, stress is going to be the number one thing that retains that weight. It changes your glucose metabolism and all that science that goes with it. But the bottom line was I needed to sleep, and I lived with 3 or 4 hours of sleep a night. So I shifted that. I made a SMART goal for myself through the program after, being part of facilitating this for other veterans, and started sleeping 7 hours, 5 nights a week. Still really hard to do, and I struggle with that one still. Long story short, I actually lost 50 pounds, and they're still lost. They're gone. And I don't diet and I don't exercise, but my lifestyle changes just align with really wanting to be authentic, which was probably my mission, aspiration, and purpose. I wanted to bring this information to my comrades and do it from a place of truth.
That is an amazing story. It really is. And I mean, I think that speaks to how important it is. I mean, we have not only making sure we're taking care of our veterans, but making sure we're taking care of those who take care of our veterans, and having that that employee, satisfaction. I mean, I think you in turn then you return that to the people that you're taking care of. So what are the types of offerings? I know we haven't really gone into the meat and potatoes. You talked about a few different programs, but across the board, like what are you offering here? Or what is VA starting to look at offering? Things like that.
So we offer, so Kathy kind of alluded to the 3 circles of health. So one of the circles are the complementary and integrative health modalities. And that's what a lot of people think of when they think of whole health, because those are the fun things. That's the acupuncture and the massage and the yoga. We do meditation groups. We do biofeedback, heart math biofeedback. We do iRest, yoga nidra. We do acupressure, which teaches veterans self-care techniques that they can do on themselves when they're on their own. And then we really try to steer folks to some of our education classes so that they can have a similar experience to what Kathy had of actually learning the information that they can use to make changes in their own lifestyle and health. So we do nutrition workshops and transition to healthy eating classes. We actually offer health coaching as well, individual health coaching and group health coaching. We have a group called the Circle of Health group, which is sort of like a living with whole health type of group where patients can come in and just talk about their experiences and things that are important to them. And we do a Taking Charge of My Life and Health group, which Kathy, do you want to talk about that a little bit? That's a really powerful group.
That's under that empowering, ideally intended to be veteran peers, so veterans, engaging veterans. It's a 6-week program. It actually has some flexibility so you can run it in a shorter period or a longer period of time. What has worked out here is we're doing 6-week sessions. And so that's the goal, is to have veterans come in, do a personal health inventory, which is a really amazing tool. We have a short form and a long form. We have them do a long form, but which looks at all 8 components of self-care, invites them to know what is their reason. Well, why do they want their health? What is their mission, their aspiration, and their purpose? And then in the context of that, they actually do a self-assessment of where they are and where they'd like to be. And so through this course, we talk with them about where they are, because obviously we want to focus on strengths, but then where's an avenue that they might like to change? And through the group process, so the veterans are supporting each other through this, not from an advice, but it's a facilitated group. And everyone picks an area that they'd like to work on, and then we learn how to do SMART goals. So they're specific, measurable, action-oriented, realistic, and time-sensitive. And the veterans help each other make those goals SMART. And then they have a week or 2 in between, come back and talk about how they succeeded, what were the barriers, we've talked about a plan B. And so really they're paying attention to what they want their health for, and they're recognizing an opportunity to make change. We're giving them skills to be able to know how to do that and be successful. And they're getting to talk about it among their peers. They're very, really powerful. I mean, to watch how these veterans connect, and some of them are coming because they really do want the group, they want that connection. It's important.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then their opportunity for coaching afterwards, and then this also kind of, I think it feeds the whole health of the Circle of Health group, or the Living with Whole Health, because veterans are coming back and they want to talk about the changes. We have nutrition classes that are really, I would say veterans have said it's totally changed the way I eat. And we have veterans who come and they continue to come, and because they continue to learn. So they're learning based on what they've been trying for the last year, and they come up with something else and they learn. And so they absorb at different levels based on where they are, where they've grown in their own self-care behaviors.
Yeah.
Pretty fascinating.
It is. And where we started as sort of a clinic where veterans would come to this clinic to receive a modality, we're now trying to spread our reach to all of the clinical services and have all of the clinicians understand what an important part of practicing medicine this is, so that any provider at any point of care can be competent in whole health and incorporating it into their own practice specific to what their discipline is, in addition to having the clinic as a support. So our hope is, patients come in and they say, all I want is a monthly massage, or all I want is acupuncture, but then we're sort of opening their eyes to all of the other benefits and components that are available to them to support their own health.
If you're a patient here at the DC VAMC, how do you go about, is it just coming up and saying, okay, I'm going to ask you about whole health? Or is it how do you go about actually taking part in some of these classes or activities? Any
of our licensed providers can put in a consult for patients. And then the step from there is that the patients come and do an orientation session with us, because we don't want people to just show up for a monthly massage and not understand the whole big picture of the program. So we go through an orientation with them and explain the purpose of whole health, what whole health is, looking at their own goals and motivations, and then talk about what's offered. And we're going to really try to connect their goals with the classes that we offer so they align for each veteran coming through the program. And once they go through the orientation class, they can drop in for most of our classes anytime they're here. So for folks at Belvoir, we encourage them to, it's a long way to drive in for just, a class or two, but if they're coming in for another appointment, to kind of sandwich their appointment with a couple of things going on in the whole health clinic. So maybe they come for acupuncture, go to their appointment, and then do something with nutrition, and then drive home, and then they've had a very fulfilling day.
And you talk about, it sounds like you've had some great success just introducing the idea to people. And I know that it can be a bit controversial when you're talking to a patient, saying, well, I don't know how you phrase it, if there's concern over reliance on opioids for pain management and things like that. And there's sort of this gasp and this concern from people that they're concerned that, they're going to be in pain. Mm-hmm. And what the gentleman I was talking to about, Brad Barton, he explained to me was, it's not so much that this is taking away your pain, but it's sort of reframing how you view your pain. And I wonder if you guys can talk a little bit to that and how important that is, especially for people who might have concerns that, well, I just want the pain to be gone, instead of trying to rely on an alternative mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the offerings that we have here, and we partner with our interdisciplinary pain rehab program. Part of that is open access to a pain neuroscience education class. So it's reframing the way patients view their own pain experience and giving them a bigger toolbox to manage it. So nobody is saying we're going to eliminate all pain. We're going to eliminate all mental health concerns. We're going to eliminate any chronic conditions. However, we have a lot of data coming out that's showing that it's really helping with it. So, for example, this is an executive summary that was actually just released on January 27th, and it was from data that was collected at the 18 flagships facilities, but if it's okay, I want to share a little bit of it with you because it's very impactful. So 31% of veterans with chronic pain engaged in some type of whole health services. And this report is stating that they expect up to 44% of veterans with chronic pain to engage in whole health services by the end of 2020. So it is a very valuable resource. I think we get a lot of referrals from the pain clinic here. And further, they showed a positive impact on reducing opioid use among veterans who were engaging with whole health. So the data supports a threefold reduction in opioid use among veterans with chronic pain who used whole health services compared with those who did not.
And this is, I mean, I would assume that's like I want to say voluntary, but that's not like the doctor taking you off of pain medication and saying you should go to this program. This is people who go into the program using pain medicine and then, wow, okay.
So, and for the comprehensive whole health users, which I think they classified as patients who went to 8 or more whole health visits, their opioid use decreased 38% compared with an 11% decrease among those who did not use whole health. So the data is definitely supporting whole health as a modality for chronic pain. And they also showed some improvements in patient-reported health and well-being, which, you know, of course, with veteran satisfaction and veteran perception, even if there's not an objective measure, veteran quality of life, to me, is a very important measure. And they showed greater improvements in perceptions of the care received as being more patient-centered, greater improvements in engagement in healthcare and self-care, greater improvements in engagement in life, indicating improvements in mission, aspiration, and purpose, and greater improvements in perceived stress, indicating improvements in overall well-being. And then they also looked at pharmacy cost savings and showed that veterans with mental health conditions who were using whole health had a smaller increase in outpatient pharmacy costs compared to other veterans, similar veterans who did not use whole health services. So for the veterans who were using whole health services, they had a 3.5% annual increase, but veterans who were not using whole health services had a 12.5% annual increase. So that's very, very significant.
I think, too, to piggyback on that, when you look at the whole health system, it's got three circles. The first is about empowering veterans with knowledge, with information. And the goal is to have actually veterans empowering other veterans. So there's a whole element of the program system-wide that's teaching veterans to teach other veterans. So that's a really powerful piece right there. Veterans are learning, and from their own experience, they're actually teaching other veterans, and we're teaching them, materials. And then there's equipped, and so our goal is to equip veterans with skills that they can use on their own, not just having to come here, but what can we teach you to do for yourself that's going to allow you to take charge. And so a lot of it has to do with the nervous system. 90% of what happens to us is, autonomically controlled by our nervous system. And so when I am doing a biofeedback heart math class with veterans, we're talking about heart rate variability. Well, we know scientifically that if we can help veterans adjust their heart rate variability to increase that actually has physiologic benefit. And they're learning that. And we use biofeedback equipment that helps them know that. And so I had one veteran tell me, he said, Kathy, I was using the biofeedback, this heart-focused breathing. He said, I'm using it when we're doing Reiki. He said, you'd be amazed how it's improving my Reiki experience. Or when he's doing I Rest Yoga Nidra. So we're teaching different skills for veterans to be able to influence their own their activation of their own nervous system, which is really what happens with stress and insomnia and anxiety and depression, and all of those things are impacting their nervous system. So we're giving them skills to counter their experiences otherwise. That's really powerful to have them, to have a veteran say, you know what, I had to go into an MRI. He said, I cannot stand those. He said, but it's okay, I remembered. I thought about class and I just did my breathing. I went through the whole thing, didn't have any problem. They didn't even have to give me anything. And when you hear those kinds of reports, that may not be quite numbers, but the veterans' experience of how they're able to take charge and make choices. I think that's a really important thing. We talk about mindfulness-based stress reduction, so recognizing that there's a stimulus and there's a point between they act or react, and helping them recognize that they're making a choice and being mindful about that. That's powerful.
Another episode just flying right by here, and it's hard to believe. Episode 9 in the books. Ashley, some final thoughts here on today's topic of alternative therapies for veterans.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll echo what some of our guests have shared today. And I think it's just that you kind of need to approach this with an open mind. There are a lot of people who suffer from chronic pain. We know that veterans really struggle with this, and they've been, in some cases, put on these regimens of pain management medication. And it is tough to transition, to find appropriate alternatives that can help you reduce your reliance there. And some people may put up their hands and say, wait a second, I'm not comfortable with this. I don't know that that's going to work for me. But as we've heard, there have been documented cases of success. Like, it's not ones and twos. This is a lot of people reporting really positive improvements through these programs. So it's about having an open mind, exploring what VA has to offer, and just sitting in on a class, seeing what it can do for you.
Great stuff, Ashley. Always fun doing an episode with you. Looking forward to many more ahead here in 2020. Remember, subscribe to the podcast. You can do it on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, among other places. Find us anytime, dav.org/podcast, dav.org, where you can get help, or you can help us help veterans by making a donation. For Ashley Burns and all of us here at DAV, I'm Dan Klaskins. We'll catch you next time right here on the DAV Podcast.